Okay, so a lot of people have trouble with what we call pre-writing, getting things organized and ready to actually start writing. Even if their English is good enough to put sentences together and express ideas, the stuff that comes before that can be difficult for everybody, not just language learners, but everybody who sits down to write. So it might be helpful just to go over a few strategies that will help to make that whole process easier. Before we get into that directly, though, let's go over an idea that it might be difficult to see the connection to writing immediately, but if you can get your head around this, it makes everything else much, much easier later on. So, what is the smallest piece of English, the smallest part of English? That would be a letter. What is one bigger than a letter? What is one stage of English, one level of English bigger than a letter? Well, we could go with a word. And we're going to define a word as a group of letters working together. Now, what the letters are doing in writing, the letters are working together to spell out the sound of a word. Words are spoken first. Writing is an attempt to record language, which is oral, spoken and heard. The language lives verbally. Writing is an attempt to record that for later. So when we write down a word, we're writing down a group of letters who are working together to sound out the sound of that word. Okay, so what's one bigger than a word? Well, we can have a phrase, and a phrase is a group of words working together. What are they working together to do? They're working together to express an idea that is bigger than one word can hold. So, a group of words that are working together to express one idea. What's bigger than a phrase? Sentence. A sentence is bigger than a phrase. A sentence is a group of phrases. Now, it's true. A sentence could be one phrase. A sentence could be one word. Stop! Exclamation point. That's a sentence. That's a complete grammatically correct sentence. It's only one word. But generally speaking, a sentence is a group of phrases, again, working together. And from here on out, they're all working together in the same way. A sentence is a group of phrases that are working together to express an idea that is bigger than one phrase can do by itself, or bigger than, unless it's a one phrase sentence, a simple sentence. What's bigger than a sentence? A paragraph. And you see where this is going, I assume by now. A group of sentences working together. And what's bigger than a paragraph? Well, we'll say an essay. A group of paragraphs working together. Now, I mean, an essay is basically any piece of writing that's shorter than a book, generally speaking. There are specific implications to the word essay as opposed to article or journal or other words we might use for a longer piece of writing or a multi-paragraph piece of writing. But essay covers a lot of them, so that's the one that I generally use. So an essay is a group of paragraphs working together to express one idea that's bigger than any of those individual paragraphs can express by themselves. A paragraph is a group of sentences working together to express an idea bigger than any one of those sentences can express by itself, et cetera, all the way down. So we have a list of different sizes of pieces of writing that do different things, but kind of do the same thing as well. Now, we'll come back to this in a little bit. Let's leave that for now, but we'll come back to it in a little bit. I'm going to open a new these. There we go. Oh no. So take this away. Put it there. Okay. So now let's say we're going to sit down and write an essay. We're going to write a long blog post or an article for some sort of a newsletter or, um, well, maybe we'll stick to a blog as our example. Yeah, no, that's maybe a bit too realistic. So let's say we're sitting down to write an opinion essay. Just express an opinion, argue an opinion, try and convince other people that our opinion is correct. And I don't really feel like doing anything serious the most. So let's, as an example, use maybe say dogs are better than cats. That will be our opinion. So let's say we want to write a blog post expressing our firmly held belief that dogs are better than cats. And we sit down to write this blog post and, well, wait, what do we do? What do we do first? How do we start? I thought I had a pretty good idea of why I think dogs are better than cats, but as soon as I sit down to write, suddenly I can't think of anything. This happens all the time. So what we want to do is just think of as many ideas as possible, write them down. Ideas why dogs are good, ideas why cats are bad, maybe anything that we can think of to compare the two, and just write them all down, as many as we can think of. So let's see, dogs are useful. Okay, maybe we'll add some smaller ideas under this or connected ideas. So dogs are useful. They can guard things. They can fetch things. What else can they do? They can, seeing eye dogs, police dogs, maybe drug sniffing dogs. That could be good or bad depending on your lifestyle, I suppose. What else can we say about dogs? Dogs are friendlier than cats. That's not necessarily true, but a lot of people believe it, so we'll use it as an argument. Generally, dogs are more, they show their affection more directly than cats tend to, I suppose. What else? The problem for me here is that I actually prefer cats to dogs, but I like both of them. Well, dogs are friendlier than cats. Dogs have many sizes. Cats are all kind of the same size, more or less. Dogs come in a wider variety of sizes and shapes. And eat more things. Dogs are omnivores, cats are carnivores, so dogs can eat vegetables and rice and things like that. Cats can't. All right, well, let's maybe move on to cats. What's wrong with cats? Cats are, see, cats don't like you. We'll play into the stereotypes. Cats are aloof. Cats poop in the house. All right. Cats don't do anything useful. So I'm kind of looking at my dogs list and comparing cats to some of those things, because that's probably what I'm going to end up doing in the essay anyway. All right, so we've got a handful of things that we can use. So we want to maybe think of a couple of main ideas that we're going to use. So we're going to have an introduction. This is where we're going to make our outline. So first you come up with as many ideas as you can. If this was a more interesting or a serious topic, maybe we could come up with some more ideas. At the moment, that's probably fine. Once you have all your ideas generated, you choose the ones you want to use, you organize them into some sort of an outline, and then you use your outline to write your essay. That's the general process. So we're going to have an let's leave some space there. Introduction there. And to use a bullet list. I like lists. So we're going to start with an introduction. Our next paragraph. Okay, what are we'll say we'll have We want to write an essay that's around 400, 500 words, something like that. We want to think about how many main ideas we can fit in there. So each paragraph will have a main idea for the essay. The essay will have one main thesis, one main idea. The idea for the essay is that dogs are better than cats. So each paragraph within that essay will have a different point to make about why dogs are better than cats. Each sentence in each paragraph will be made of sentences. Each sentence in that paragraph will be making a different point towards that reason why dogs are better than cats. This will make more sense in a moment. Okay, so we have an introduction. If we have 400 to 500 word essay, then we have room for, say, 4 or 5, say 5 paragraphs. The average paragraph in written English, written academic English or written professional business English, is between 80 and 120 words per paragraph, depending on writing style, and each person is a bit different. I tend to write longer paragraphs, so I would tend towards almost 150 words per paragraph on average, probably. But 80 to 120 is sort of the normal range. So if we round that down the middle to 100 per paragraph, 500 words is 5 paragraphs. If we have an introduction and a conclusion paragraph to our essay, that leaves us with 3 more paragraphs, so that's 3 main ideas to make. So I think if we go with the dogs are useful idea for 1, cats are unfriendly. Well, maybe we want to just compare all the way through. So cats are more useful than dogs, or than cats. Dogs are more useful than cats. Dogs are friendlier than cats. We might not have enough ideas here for a 500 word essay. So dogs are more useful than cats. Dogs are friendlier than cats. We'll say dogs are easier to feed. Not a particularly great idea, and entire books have been written on how to organize your ideas for best persuasive effect. Generally, you don't want to end on your worst idea, which is what we're doing in this outline. But so be it. We can change that there. I think dogs are more useful than cats. Probably not the biggest idea. So we'll start from weakest and go to strongest in this one. Okay, so dogs are friendlier than cats is probably the strongest recommendation for dogs over cats from a personal perspective. If I'm looking to buy a dog or a cat as a pet, dogs are friendlier than cats is going to be my most convincing argument. Dogs are more useful than cats. Well, I'm not planning to use a pet. I'm not training up a drug sniffing dog or a police dog, unless I'm blind and I need a seeing eye dog. I'm still not going to be training my own seeing eye dog, probably. So, utility, being useful, is probably not very convincing, but more convincing than being easier to feed. Okay, so introduction, our 3 main ideas, and then the conclusion. So, the introduction, we want to introduce main idea. Can't type today. Introduce main idea. We want to get reader interested. That's what we want to do there. We'll figure out how to do that in a minute. Dogs are easier to feed. Dogs are omnivores. Eat anything, more or less. There's some foods they can't eat, but they eat plants and they eat meat, so they're omnivores. Cats are carnivores. Cats can't digest plants, so easier to find food for a dog. Let's say there's a zombie apocalypse and Ralston Purina isn't making kibble anymore. It'd be hard to feed a cat Cat wouldn't be sticking around anyway because the cat doesn't need you or want you. But it'd be a lot easier to feed your dog because the dog can eat whatever you're eating. All right. Dogs are more useful than cats. Okay, well, we have examples of those in our ideas list. So fetching, that's a personal utility. We'll go working dogs. We have seeing eye dogs, police dogs, and drug sniffing dogs, and guard dogs. Okay. Dogs are friendlier than cats. Greet you at the door. Happy to see you. Cats don't really care if you live or die. Again, not necessarily true, but relatively funny, and a lot of people think that anyway, so we'll play off their prejudices. Okay, so now we have a bunch of ideas. Oh, conclusion. What do we want to restate? Main idea, that being that dogs are better than cats. Explain why it matters. Okay, so the introduction of an essay, an academic essay in particular, should do a couple of things. It should get the reader interested. It should tell the reader what the essay is about and introduce the main ideas of the essay. And it should give the reader an idea of the style of your writing. So those three things. The conclusion should do a couple of things. It should restate the main idea, but in different words. It should summarize the main points the essay made very briefly. Again, in different words from the way you said it in the paragraphs. And it should tell the reader why this information that you're giving them or why the idea that you're presenting is important. Why should they care? Why does it matter? So that's introduction and conclusion on an academic essay. Generally speaking, whatever you're writing, if there's a beginning and an end, a blog post, an email, pretty much any kind of writing you're doing that's not just for you to remember stuff, for example, but any kind of writing any kind of thing you're writing for someone else to read is going to have some purpose, and it's probably going to want some form of an introduction, maybe not a whole paragraph, maybe not a separate paragraph, but you'll want to introduce some idea or ideas. You'll want to conclude at the end, draw a close to the thing. So introductions and conclusions do those things, and they exist in almost every form of writing. So then we have the body, which is the middle paragraphs, which they do the heavy lifting. They bring the information to the table, or they do the persuading in a persuasive piece of writing. So here's an interesting thing. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main ideas in our bullet list. Each of these main ideas has some smaller ideas. Now, dogs are omnivores, eat anything. This is not a sentence. This is not a whole sentence. But if we were to expand this and turn it into a whole sentence, and then we expand this one and turn that into a whole sentence, and then we expand this one and turn that into a whole sentence, and the main idea we should probably say at some point. So, dogs are, and I'm going to add some flavor words and some adjectives and things in here as well, just to give it some personality, I guess. Dogs are much easier to feed than cats. I'm going to bring that here. Dogs are omnivores, which means they can eat anything. And I'm going to expand that idea. That means they can eat meat and they can eat plants. Now I'm going to bring cats in. Cats, and I'm going to use on the other hand, to make that comparison more obvious, are carnivores. They can only eat meat and can't digest plants. This makes it much, repetition for emphasis, much easier to find food for a dog than it is, we'll say, than for a cat. Keep it simple. There we go. So look, we've got each of those ideas turned into a sentence. That's only about 61 words. This is a very simple essay, very simple topic as well, so there's not much to say about it, to be honest. So our paragraphs are likely to be a bit shorter than if we're doing a higher level academic essay on like the IELTS exam or the TOEFL exam, for example. So dogs are much easier to feed than cats. Dogs are omnivores, which means they can eat anything. That means they can eat meat and they can eat plants. Cats, on the other hand, are carnivores. They can only eat meat and can't digest plants. This makes it much easier to find food for a dog than for a cat. So we have a decent paragraph here. I mean, it could be better, and we could make it better if we wanted to spend the time and polish it up and fix some of those sentences and make them more interesting, or we might want to add an extra idea or two. As we're writing this, we might think of something else to say on the topic that we didn't think of before, and we can add that in. That's fine. So what we do have, though, is a paragraph. A paragraph is made up of a group of sentences. These aren't sentences yet, but we can turn them into sentences. And if these sentences are all connected to this idea, so they are already, these ideas are working together to express this idea. So if we turn these into sentences, these sentences belong in a paragraph. If we do that for each of these, we have 5 paragraphs. Each of these 5 paragraphs is connected to our main idea, which is that dogs are better than cats. If we have 5 paragraphs that are all working together to express the same main big idea, that is an essay. Now, if you're writing fiction, if you're writing a story, it's the same kind of idea, except that it's a bit less directly idea-driven. You would have characters, you would come up with a plot outline, which is a list like this, but of everything that happens in your story. Just the events. So you come up with characters, you come up with settings and places and times, and you put those things together and you end up with stuff happening. Characters interact, things happen. You want to have some description in there at some point or another so that the reader knows what's going on and can picture it in their head. When you have plot, character, and setting, you have a story. So if you're writing a piece of fiction, a short story or a novel, you would come up with characters, come up with settings for your story to happen in. You'd come up with a plot, and you'd outline your plot. Well, there's a pretty significant debate in writer circles as to whether it's best to be a plotter or a pantser. Meaning, do you plot out your story, or do you write by the seat of your pants? Do you make it up as you go along? My take on it is that everybody does an outline at some point or another. Everybody does a plot outline at some point. Plotters, people who sit down and write their plot outline, do it at the beginning, and they might make some changes down the line. But if you're reasonably good at organizing your ideas, you probably won't have to change too much, and your outline will keep you on track and writing a good, solid story. Pantsers write their outline in the form of a first draft. Then they go back and they completely change everything and all the things that didn't work, and they rewrite it again and rewrite it again and rewrite it again until they're happy with it. So generally speaking, both groups are doing the same thing, but one group takes an awful lot longer and does a lot more work in the process. If you can organize your thoughts properly in an outline, do a plot outline, do some character descriptions, and figure out who your characters are more or less at the beginning of the story. That can go a long way towards simplifying your life. So that's basically what you would do from start to finish to write an essay. And you can modify this. I'm not going to go into it in this little video, but you can modify this process somewhat to write fiction, write a story or a book as well. Um, if you're writing a nonfiction book on a particular topic, it's exactly the same process as this, only bigger. Oh, we didn't talk about cats pooping in the house. We could have added an extra paragraph or two about why cats are terrible. That wouldn't have been a bad idea. Right. If you're writing a book about this, you'd need more ideas, and you'd probably want to have subsections that are bigger than a paragraph but smaller than an essay. Um, but the organization is still kind of the same, and the process is exactly the same. You come up with your ideas, you organize your ideas, you turn the smallest of your ideas into 1 or 2 sentences, or 3 or 4 sentences, depending on how big your outline is, and you stick to your grouping that you've made in your outline, and when you're done, you have a thing. You have an essay or you have a book. And then you can go through and edit your book or edit your essay and polish your sentences and make everything read more smoothly, connect your ideas more effectively, fix any grammar mistakes, do all that stuff. But in terms of pre-writing, how to prepare and sit down and get something finished, this is how you do it. This is the most adaptable, most flexible, and generally speaking, the most useful process to get something written, get it done. So hopefully that helps. Have fun, and hopefully I'll read something you wrote someday.